Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. I'm Dad, this is my den, and I've been doing a few videos about my experiences with role-playing games. You know, starting with playing basic D&D back when I was 12 years old, and I'm working my way through different editions that I played, and I'm going to hit on some other games as well. But today, I wanted to actually just do a video. Um, with maybe some tips for how to get the most out of playing Dungeons and Dragons with friends, or at least with associates who you don't hate. Um, Now this isn't going to be talking about here's the game you should play, here's the way you should play your game, because there's a lot of games, there's hundreds of games, there's thousands of variations on those games, and there's lots of different styles of play, and none of them are wrong, as long as the folks at the table, the participants, are having a good time. But sometimes they're not having such a good time. And so I wanted to give some tips on how to make sure that everybody participating in the game maybe has their best chance to enjoy the sessions of the games you're playing. And so this, I think, a lot of this comes down to to table dynamics and to the responsibilities of the participants in these games. Now, for a lot of people, everybody knows the responsibilities of the dungeon master, the game master, the referee. I'm going to use DM because I mostly played D&D in my life. They're responsible for buying all the rules, understanding all the rules, writing, or at least buying and reading the adventures that are going to be run. They have to run the thing. They have to keep track of all the stuff going on. They got to play all the NPCs. They got a lot to do, and they do. But I think the missing element sometimes, especially in games that aren't maybe going so well, is the responsibilities of the players. You see, everybody is participating in the game, and unless your situation is pretty unique, you're probably not paying the dungeon master to run the game. At least I never got paid. Hey, if the rest of you out there are getting paid, you need to tell me. I might have been screwing this up for 40 years. But the dungeon master is not your hired help there to give you a good time, right? It's everybody's responsibility to pitch in and make the game a good one. So let's start with the beginning. When you're putting together a group that's going to play a game, communication is absolutely key. And I think everybody who's going to play needs to have some buy-in. You do need to talk about what rule system you're using. What game are you going to play, and make sure it's something everybody wants to play. If there are going to be house rules, if there are going to be variations, if there are going to be accessories added, you need to get those nailed down at the beginning. So everybody goes in knowing what they're actually going to play. It doesn't come in thinking, you say, yeah, we're going to play D&D, and they come in thinking it's going to be 5th edition, and in fact it's going to be, original edition. That can be a problem. Make sure everybody knows what's going to be played. And then you need to start talking about the style of the game. What style are you going to play? Is this going to be kind of gonzo, kind of goofy, kind of fun? Can you have characters with joke names? Is it going to be a game where there's a lot of potential death, where you're just expected to shake it off, roll up a new character, and get to work? Is it going to be epic? Is it going to span multiple sessions where it's one giant storyline and where people are supposed to take it seriously? You got to figure these things out, and again, talk about it between the DM and the players, and make sure everybody's on board, everybody's aware, and everybody wants to be there. If they're not, you're going to have problems down the line, and they're going to be hard to solve, and they're going to be harder to solve 4 or 5 sessions in than they are right at the beginning. I mean, if you got a person who really doesn't want to play that kind of game, they might have to leave at some point. Better that they don't start off in the game than have to be asked to leave sessions in. That can strain friendships, that can cause problems. It could also cause problems within the game if that person is playing a character who's become integral to the whole thing. So that's step one. You got to lay this foundation. Make sure everybody's into it. All right, Dungeon Master responsibilities. I kind of joked about it a little bit, but you do need to understand the rules. You need to have the best possible understanding of the rules. You need to do your prep work. Now, I also think it's important to run sessions where you can roll with the punches a little bit. You know, you need to have things planned out, but you need to leave a little room for, you know, the unforeseen things that are going to come in. That's important. And even if you're running a sort of epic, don't get too detailed with the future sessions right away. Things might change as the players learn things, as you learn how the players play. You can get yourself into problems there. I'll give you an example. And if my chair is squeaking, I apologize. It's driving me nuts. And that's why I'm now leaning forward, so I hopefully won't squeak anymore. So this is something I learned with the campaign that I ran. I decided I wanted to do a bit of mystery in it. There's an event going on, and the players have to figure out what's happening so that they can solve it. And so I had everything laid out. It wasn't a super complicated mystery. It was solvable for most people. But one thing I discovered pretty soon in, I didn't have players who liked mysteries. And I didn't have players who could solve mysteries. And I mean this almost to a comical degree. You know, if all they needed to do was open a box, look around a corner, simple stuff, they wouldn't do it. They didn't get hints. They didn't pick up clues. And so I had to guide them through it a little bit more than I really wanted to. And I actually cut off some pretty big portions of the campaign because it was very clear it was not going to work. But it was a good learning experience for me. You know, I enjoy mysteries. I read and watch Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot, and I love that stuff. But I didn't think to look into whether the players were into that kind of thing. What they really wanted to do was get in fights, and, you know, they wanted to save the world, but they wanted it to be pretty obvious how the world needed saving. And so, hey, I come to you as somebody who screwed this kind of stuff up. The campaign worked out, and everybody had fun. But it was an issue, and especially for me, who'd planned so far ahead. So I had to scrap some stuff. It was wasted work. It was for the good of the game, but it was still wasted work. Keep things a little open. If you're running a campaign world, don't detail everything. The players aren't going to be everywhere all at once. Keep some things loose. You never know what you're going to need. You're never going to know what you want to do. Don't create some campaign history that is hundreds of pages long. You're not Tolkien. This is not a novel writing exercise. It's a role-playing game. Have some ideas, broad strokes. Introduce details as you need them. You're going to have enough work to do as a dungeon master. Don't drive yourself to distraction with details that may never show up or may actually turn out to really screw things up in the future. So that's the DM side. What about player responsibilities? So let's just start with the simple stuff. Show up on time. Number one. Show up ready to play. Have the things that you need to have. That's the most basic right there. But here's another important one. You need to know the rules. You need to know how the skill system works, if there is one. How do saving throws work? How does the combat system work? What do you add to the dice you're going to be rolling to do the things you want to do? You should not have to ask the dungeon master every time you do something how things work. I've had to deal with that. And not with players who were brand new, with players who really should have known better. But hey, why learn anything when I can just ask the DM? Because the DM has other things to do. We would get in situations where somebody says, okay, I'm going to attack the orc. Great. All right, roll to hit. Okay, I got a 12. That doesn't hit. Okay. Move to the next person. Whoa, wait a minute. Hold on. Do I add my strength bonus to that? Yes. You've added your strength bonus to that roll 400 times. Yes. Oh, sorry. Okay, it's a 14. Does that hit? No, it doesn't hit. Okay. All right, what do you want? What? Yes, add the +1 for the magic sword. Oh, it's a 15. Okay, yes, you hit. Roll damage. Drive you nuts. As the player, you need to understand how your character works. You need to understand how their special abilities work. If you're like a spellcaster, you need to understand how the spells work. You should know them as well or better than the dungeon master. You need to know what you need to add up. And if it takes prep work, if you need to have a complex character sheet where you make all this stuff down because you can't keep it in your head, fine, do that. But go in knowing how to play the game. It is not the DM's responsibility to teach you the game every single time you play. It's just not. It's very frustrating. The DM has a lot of stuff that he's trying to keep in his head. NPCs, reactions, this and that. I got to remember the wandering monsters. Take the burden that is yours on your shoulders. Come on, players. And finally, while it's important for the dungeon master to have, and this may take a few sessions, but to have an idea of what the individual players really like in a game, and trying to offer those moments for them. When I one time had a group that would be 6 or 7 people, and this was the 3rd edition, so the combats would take forever. I had some people who really liked the combat. They really liked rolling the dice. Great. I had somebody who really liked solving puzzles. I had some people really liked the role play aspect. Some people didn't like it so much. And so as a DM, I'm trying to offer up these moments for each player to sort of shine. The one thing that's going to really get their eyes to light up. But it's important for the players to recognize that not every moment in the game is going to be your favorite moment in the game. Maybe you're not that big on combat. Okay, but recognize that some of your fellow players are. Let them have their fun. Don't be rolling your eyes. Don't be like, okay, I'm going to go, do something else for a minute while you guys figure. Try to get into it. And this is something, just life lesson stuff. Try to grow as a human being. Don't be the person who just says, I don't like that, I'm never going to like it, and that's that. Try new experiences. If you're not that into the role-playing aspect, try to get into it. Obviously, some people enjoy it. There's got to be something about it that's enjoyable. Try to find that thing. And maybe you can't. Okay, fine. Then be patient. Let the role players, do their funny voices and all that stuff, and support them in that. And then wait for the stuff that you're more into, and then you kind of get to shine, right? It's important to come in with the right attitude as a player. It's participatory. It's not just you. It's a lot of people. It's the other players. It's the dungeon master. Hopefully everybody's going to come away from the session having had some fun, having had a good time. Even the poor DM who, has a lot of work to do. But hopefully it's fun work. When it becomes grunt work, that's the point where you start getting DM burnout. And we see that a lot in the hobby with guys who are just like, I can't. Women who say, I don't want to I don't want to run the game anymore. And not everybody can run a role-playing game. People can build the skills, but I mean, it kind of takes a person in many parts to do this kind of stuff. You need that organization, but they also need to have that imagination. And so when you find somebody who's a good DM, try to hold on to them. Make sure they're having a good time. Don't stress them out. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. And work with the players to make that fun situation. And then everybody comes away happy. So everybody, kind of set the terms. Figure out what you're going to do. Get the buy-in from everybody. Show up to play. Show up with a good attitude. Learn the rules. DM and players alike. Learn the rules. So there's not a lot of arguing. So there's not a lot of having to look things up. So you're not putting a lot on one person's shoulders who actually bothers to learn the rules. And go in learning and growing a little bit. So, you may find out that some of this stuff you didn't think was so great. Maybe it's better than you thought it was. It's all part of growing as a person. I think you do those things, no matter what game you're playing, no matter what kind of style of game you're playing, I think you're going to come away having a much better time at the table. So there you go. A little advice from a 40-year veteran of the role-playing game wars. If you thought this advice was useful, please give it a like. Maybe subscribe to the channel. If you have some tips yourself or some thoughts on what I said, throw it down there in the comments. I'd love to see it. I'd love to read what you have to say, and maybe it'll spark some ideas for some future videos on sort of tips on running role-playing games. And in the meantime, I hope you have an awesome day. Be kind to one another out there, and I will see you again soon on Dad's Den of Pop Culture.